Coming up on Global Business, we're on the ground in Johannesburg for the 15th BRICS Summit, where expanding membership is expected to be high on the agenda. The Shanghai Free Trade Zone is trialing the import of remanufactured goods. We'll take a closer look at how this new move can save costs and help factories expand market share. And today is the Qixi Festival, or China's Valentine's Day. We'll explore how Chinese couples are getting innovative to create lasting memories on this romantic day. Welcome everyone to Global Business here on CGTN. I'm Michael Wong here in Beijing. We begin with our coverage of the 15th BRICS Summit. The major developing economies of Brazil, Russia, China, and South Africa, collectively known as the BRICS, are holding their 15th summit in the economic capital of South Africa, Johannesburg. Now, this marks the second time that South Africa is hosting the BRICS Summit. So for more on that, let's get to our Robert Nagela, who's standing by live for us in Johannesburg. Robert, thank you for joining us. Talk to us first about how the diplomatic agenda is looking like so far.
Well, just before we get into that really quickly, anytime now we expect the leaders of the BRICS member countries to begin arriving here at the convention center just behind me. There's a heavy presence of security, and this entire area has now been cordoned off. So they're now beginning to move the vehicles much faster than what we had seen much earlier. But just going back to your question in terms of the agenda, a lot of people now, the expectations are more focused on the BRICS membership. We know at least 20 to 23 countries have applied to join the BRICS bloc. So that is one of the items on the agenda. The other item on the agenda that a lot of people will be looking forward to is the decoupling global trade from the dollar. Decoupling global trade from the dollar. There's a feeling here that using the dollar as a global currency has not been very fair to quite a few countries. They believe that the West, especially the United States, has used the dollar to leverage its position on global issues, and most countries have not really come out of that really fairly. So those are the two main issues that a lot of people here are focused on, that people are looking forward to see what the outcome will be. Now, in terms of the membership, whether that will be decided during this particular summit remains to be seen. We know it is an item on the agenda to be discussed here. Like I said, about 20 to 23 countries have applied for membership. But also, just to add on to that, we know that quite a number of countries, the leadership of several countries across the continent and across the world have also been invited for this particular summit. So a lot of expectations on the outcomes of this particular summit.
Absolutely, Robert. And like you mentioned, BRICS leaders will be arriving at that convention center relatively soon to deliver remarks. So many thanks for that report, and certainly looking forward to those remarks as well. Meanwhile, our Sun Ye is also on the ground for us in Johannesburg with more. Hi there, Sun Ye. We know that the BRICS Business Forum has been ongoing the whole day today. So what's the latest on that front?
Hey there, we are at the venue where the BRICS Business Forum has been taking place the whole day. And in an hour or two, perhaps the most important session today will be taking place. That will be the leader session. The 5 leaders for BRICS countries are expected to each make statements at this session that's scheduled for an hour or two later. And you will see people are filing in. With this place is getting crowded because those speeches obviously will be the talk of the day. Now, setting the stage for that leader session where the 5 leaders of BRICS countries are going to make statements will be a speech by a chair for the BRICS Business Council, and also an introduction by South Africa's trade minister, Ebrahim Patel. Now, the South Africa's trade minister has actually told us that he believes this BRICS session will be the kind of place that show the world how BRICS has made the world a better place. He says this session we're in right now would be the place where the world get the best of the products, ideas, the growth opportunities, and very honest talks between BRICS countries. And throughout the day, we heard just that. Throughout the entire day, starting this morning, there have been discussions on issues that BRICS countries as well as African countries care about. We also heard from many Chinese participants, including the vice chairman for China's Council for Trade Promotion, Mr. Zhang Shaogang. He was sharing a lot about how China facilitated and built a business-friendly environment. And we also heard from Chinese participants who talk about the transition to new energy structure mix. And we have also heard from Chinese and other participants talk about the importance of small, medium-sized enterprises in their contribution to economic growth, and how they should work to make SMEs grow, even though they have very, very different needs. So we have heard very honest and what the participants say, talks that are at a very high level of trust, and we expect that kind of talk to also happen later, including perhaps what we will hear from the leaders. We'll keep you posted, of course, on that upcoming leaders session. Back to you.
Yeah, a jam-packed room behind you at the BRICS Business Forum. Many thanks for that. Arsunia for us in Johannesburg, also covering the BRICS Summit for us. Now, over the years, BRICS countries have been at the forefront of global economic growth, the IMF saying in its report that BRICS countries are set to overtake the G7 nations and steer the global economy in the years ahead. Take a look.
Emerging markets are on the rise. According to the International Monetary Fund, the proportion of GDP contributed by BRICS countries experienced a significant uptick, with a 17.3 percentage points rise between 2000 and 2022. In contrast, the GDP share of the G7 nations declined by 22 percentage points during the same period. Looking ahead to 2023, the IMF's projections reveal a compelling narrative. BRICS countries are anticipated to contribute a substantial 32.1% to global economic expansion, while the G7 nations are poised to generate a more modest 29.9%. This trend is anticipated to gain further momentum. The IMF predicts that the BRICS economies will take on a pivotal role in driving worldwide economic growth in the next 5 years, with our indicator projected to reach an impressive 33.6% by 2028. In contrast, the G7's share is predicted to dwindle to 27.8% by then.
And for more on the BRICS Summit in Africa, I want to bring in Tanya, who is the Deputy Director of the BRICS Research Center at the University of International Business and Economics. Tanya, thank you so much for joining us. So I want to begin with South Africa first, because in addition to attending the BRICS Summit, President Xi Jinping has paid a state visit to South Africa as well. And in his signed article on South Africa media, Tanya, President Xi Jinping wrote that China-South Africa relations have achieved leapfrog development and has entered into a golden era. So how strong is the strategic trust, you think, between these two nations, and how have economic ties evolved in those 25 years since the establishment of diplomatic ties?
Oh, hi, Michael. Thank you for this question. We can see that the year 2023 marks the 25th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between China and South Africa. The strategic trust between the two nations has actually gradually strengthened over the past 25 years. China-South Africa relations have achieved a leapfrog, as President Xi stated, from a partnership to a strategic partnership, and then to a comprehensive strategic partnership. This progression has continually moved towards higher quality, broader fields, and deeper levels. Here, let me take the trade relations, for example. When we look at the statistics, over the past 25 years, bilateral trade of China and South Africa has increased from $1.4 billion in 1998 to nearly $57 billion in 2022. Since 2009, China has been South Africa's largest trading partner for 14 consecutive years, and since 2010, South Africa has been China's largest trading partner in Africa for 13 consecutive years. China-South Africa bilateral trade accounts for about 1/5 of China-Africa total trade volume. According to the General Administration of Customs in China, in 2022, the trade volume between the two countries increased to about $54 billion, a year-on-year increase about 50%. And South Africa's exports to China were about $33 billion, a year-on-year increase of nearly 60%. And it is worth mentioning that recently the South African corn export channels to China has been officially opened. China's corn imports are gradually shifting from mainly relying on countries such as United States and Ukraine to South Africa. Besides, both nations have also diversified their economic collaboration into areas such as infrastructure, energy cooperation, and joint ventures in various sectors. So this is my viewpoint on the subject. Thank you.
Yeah, so an absolute surge when it comes to China-South Africa bilateral trade, and now increasingly we're seeing more Chinese investment going into the country as well to really spur the manufacturing sector and create more high value-added jobs. Tanya, let's talk about BRICS, because high on the agenda at this year's summit is, of course, BRICS expansion. How do you see the BRICS grouping, especially if we see that expanded BRICS really supporting faster growth and more sustainable development in Africa, which are two of the themes of this year's BRICS summit?
Yes, thank you for the question. We can notice that there is a growing discussion about the expansion of BRICS recently, accompanied with various opinions. So I think it is crucial for us to acknowledge that any expansion of an association introduces both fresh opportunities and challenges for existing members. Therefore, it is natural for various opinions to emerge during the expansion of BRICS. In my view, in the case of BRICS, moderate expansion brings more benefit than drawbacks. A significant example is the expansion occurred when South Africa joined BRICS in 2010. During that time, concerns were raised such as South Africa is geographically distant from other members. However, this expansion proved highly successful, especially in supporting Africa's economic growth and sustainable development you mentioned. And economic survey data from African Development Bank in 2022 indicates that BRICS countries are currently Africa's largest trading partners. Additionally, the BRICS countries are emerging as significant investors in Africa, particularly in sectors of manufacturing, infrastructure, and also services. Taking the cooperation between China and South Africa, for example, according to the Chinese embassy in South Africa, by the end of 2021, Chinese companies had invested more than $25 billion in South Africa, more than 200 various types of Chinese-funded enterprises or institutions registered with the Chinese embassy in Africa have created over 400,000 local jobs, involving sectors such as energy, communication, finance, and manufacturing. Now, as the African Continental Free Trade Area came into effect in early 2021, African countries have entered a really new phase of development. I firmly believe that BRICS will continue to assume an important role in the ongoing development of Africa. So this is my perspective. Thank you.
Yeah. And Tanya, media reports pointing to over 40 countries either formally applying for or expressing interest in joining BRICS, including many major African countries such as Egypt, such as Algeria, Nigeria, and Ethiopia as well. We also hear of other major developing economy giants such as Saudi Arabia, such as Indonesia, Argentina, and Iran seeking to join also. So what does this all say about the attractiveness of the BRICS mechanism especially for emerging and developing economies?
Yes, Michael, thank you for this insightful question. I'm glad to share some of my own understandings. As well as we know that BRICS grouping is an informal interstate association of 5 countries now, one important reason for the enduring power of BRICS is its relatively loose form in cooperation. Unlike organizations such as G7, there are no binding rules for BRICS members actually, which allows for a more flexible and adaptable approach to collaboration. Such form of cooperation highlights BRICS' core values of mutual respect, mutual benefit, equality, openness, and inclusivity, making it a very appealing platform for other countries to join in. Furthermore, BRICS strongly advocate for multilateralism, inclusivity, and peaceful development, which I think aligns with the development aspirations of many countries in the current global landscape. A typical example is the BRICS Plus model, which revolves around BRICS countries and establishes cooperative partnerships with other countries, regions, or international organizations. Countries that are already benefiting from this BRICS Plus model, I think would likely find themselves more attracted to formally join the BRICS. Moreover, the BRICS countries, along with other emerging economies and developing countries, share similar economic and development needs when confronting global challenges, including issues of poverty, terrorism, climate change, and other global concerns. So now BRICS holds a very important position in the South-South cooperation. The group's dynamic framework and its focus on mutual growth and development make it a driving force in fostering collaboration among developing economies. Besides, the accomplishments achieved by BRICS now have been offering substantial motivation for other emerging and developing economies to work together for a more prosperous future and for a better world. This is my understanding. Thank you.
Yeah, well, BRICS giving an amplified voice to the global South in emerging and developing economies. We're going to leave it there. Many thanks for your thoughts on all of this. Tanya, Deputy Director of the BRICS Research Center at UIBE. Thank you. Well, Johannesburg, the economic capital of South Africa, is hosting the BRICS Summit for a second time. South Africa's biggest city, it attracts tens of thousands of immigrants every year. Chinese-born Angela Young, who runs a jewelry design business in the city, is one such immigrant. CGTN's Julie Shire has more.
Johannesburg is playing host to the 15th and possibly the most important BRICS summit ever held. The bustling metropolis and economic heartland earned its name as the City of Gold since the discovery of the precious mineral in 1886. It kick-started the country's global domination of gold production and set the country on a path to industrialization.
Johannesburg went from a mining camp of a few dozen people to being the biggest city in South Africa in 25 years. That kind of rapid development, both in terms of economy, society, and space, has been a key feature in the life of Johannesburg.
The city's charm remains as strong as the allure of gold over 130 years later, and it continues to be a melting pot of settlers from around the world.
Johannesburg is a city of migrants and immigrants. And from very early on, people were drawn to Johannesburg from across the southern African region and from across what was then the British Empire. And Johannesburg is a city in which things happen very quickly. There's a pace to Johannesburg that is embedded in its DNA.
Chinese-born Angela Young didn't know what to expect when she moved to South Africa with her family when she was just 13.
During the time there was apartheid, it was 1990, and in Bloemfontein it was quite harsh environment that we're in Bloem. You don't know where you belong, you're not black, you're not white, and you try to fit in as much as you could. I actually learned how to speak Mandarin here in South Africa. After I matriculated, then I came to Joburg. It's like Egoli, a place of Egoli. I started university here in Johannesburg. It was really just buzzing and very exciting place to be. This is my home. I think from the last 25 30 years.
Angela now runs a successful jewelry business from Johannesburg called Impilo Collection.
It is very special to be here in Johannesburg because we have the access to the diamond dealers and also the jewelry councils. My clients all over the world, so especially after COVID, people are seeing us online. So my clients can be in China, it can be in Hong Kong, in Japan. We also have people from Africa. Most of my inspiration coming from nature, by climbing the mountains and seeing beautiful things like even the butterflies, like something like the string that it was inspired by the jacaranda we have every spring. And the color, it just reminds me of that beautiful purples that we have in Johannesburg.
Close to Jung's heart is the plight of South African women. She's now preparing to climb Mount Kumulangama in September to raise funds for women affected by gender-based violence.
This is my country, and seeing people are suffering in my country, I have to do something, especially being the brand South Africa ambassador. To me, I felt no matter how much that where you come from, who you are, what your skin look like, we can all make a difference just by making a difference with one person's life. It is so important for me to bring South African flag all the way to 8,000 meters peak. For me, it's not just bringing the flag, but also telling people how important for us as being a woman that we can put our mind together and make things happen and just focus one step at a time and get to summit. For me, what's most important is we empower women. You know that you are financially independent, you're emotionally independent, and you don't need someone to give you that diamond. And the diamond is within you.
Julie Shara, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
And of course, China and South Africa share a deep-rooted friendship. Since diplomatic relations were established 25 years ago, cooperation between the two countries has continued to expand across various fields. That expansion has been accelerated under China's Belt and Road Initiative.
A golden age of bilateral ties. That's how experts are describing relations between China and South Africa today. This year marks the 25th anniversary since diplomatic relations between the two countries were established. In that period of time, South Africa has become a comprehensive strategic partner of China and the first African country to join China's Belt and Road Initiative. Cooperation has expanded in various fields such as energy, infrastructure, and education. This is a Duar wind farm in South Africa. Its first wind power project in Africa, built by China's Longyuan Power under the Belt and Road Initiative. Officially put into operation in 2017, the project can generate 760 million kilowatt-hours of power per year, supplying power to around 300,000 households in South Africa. The Yebe Kloof interchange, currently still under construction, is another important Belt and Road project. When completed, the major north-south transport route through South Africa would also be the largest one-time investment in an infrastructure project by the country's government in the past decade.
There'll probably be about 100 supervision, management and supervision people on site. There'll probably be a workforce of around about between 400 and 500 workers, skilled workers, drivers, carpenters, shutter hands, labor as well. So it will add significantly to the employment in the area.
And China's investment into education and job creation in South Africa has unlocked new opportunities for students across the country.
And we do have almost 200 students already visit China or study in China, in some university, or got an internship opportunity in Chinese enterprise.
Economic cooperation has also yielded fruit. China has been South Africa's largest trading partner for 14 consecutive years, and South Africa has been China's top trading partner in Africa for 13 consecutive years. In 2022, bilateral trade between China and South Africa reached $56 billion, a 5% year-on-year increase. It further accelerated in the first half of 2023, shooting up 11.7%. China has also provided a huge market for South African exports. In the first half of this year, China imported $350 million worth of South African agricultural products, including citrus fruit, pear, and soy. That amounted to a 15.7% year-on-year increase. Both sides are also active advocates for multilateralism, win-win cooperation, and common development. China says it's expecting even greater fruit in the coming future for both nations as the two sides explore more ways to maximize their comprehensive strategic partnership.
Well, over 23 technical and vocational education and training colleges from across South Africa's 9 provinces have enrolled in the Huawei ICT Academy program. The Huawei ICT Academy has already trained some over 4,000 students, with more than 2,000 now obtaining Huawei certificates. Our Yolisa Njamela has more.
Huawei ICT Academy is a partnership between Huawei and other academies and other tertiary institutions around the world. Here in South Africa, the Huawei ICT Academy program runs in a number of TVET colleges and universities.
Huawei ICT Academy is one of our flagship training development programs. We work closely with the universities and TVET colleges in South Africa. We go out and we train the trainer. So we empower the trainer with the requisite skills to the point where we are satisfied in their knowledge and expertise in a particular technology. Once they have passed that training, they then can go and administer and facilitate supplementary programs to the traditional curriculum. So if students are studying computer science, engineering, as a supplement to that, they would then run the Huawei ICT Academy training programs.
Mubeko Asanda Shabalala is a beneficiary of this program. She was at a university in KwaZulu-Natal province when she was selected to study at the Huawei ICT Academy. She says the academy has broadened her scope of view to the opportunities present in the ICT field.
I had been applying, looking for bursaries. Huawei gave me all of that in one. It gave me exposure, it gave me opportunities, and it didn't hold me back. As a new graduate, you think that starting from the bottom level, they wouldn't trust you with much, but they propelled me and put me in spaces that made me feel uncomfortable, made me feel challenged, made me feel like I wasn't prepared for this and I didn't quite understand. But Huawei was able to see this in us as, you know, students from the ICT Academy and see the greatness that we have in us and propel us into spaces that we didn't imagine we'd ever find ourselves in.
Shabalala is now employed as a pre-sales engineer and product manager at Huawei South Africa headquarters. The academy works in conjunction with South Africa's Higher Education Department, which now intends to expand this program.
We have this memorandum of understanding signed already between the TVET colleges principals and Huawei. Now, all that we need to do, because the minister has already endorsed it, we need to formalize it as a department and sign a formal memorandum of understanding with Huawei.
Since the inception of the Huawei ICT Academy program, scores of students like Shabalala have successfully been placed in jobs. Yolisa Njamela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Now, during the BRICS summit, the press center of the Chinese delegation extended an invitation to Chen Siqing, who serves as the chairman of the BRICS Business Council's China chapter and as the chairman of the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China. Now, Chen took the opportunity to provide the media with insights into